Chapter 1. The Man in the Walls. Elliot's voice crackled through the static of the cheap walkie-talkie, barely rising above the sound of the wind rattling the boarded-up windows. "Liv, you copy? Something's down here." Liv adjusted her headphones, the pressure of her over-ear mics making her temples ache. She squinted at the grainy live feed from Elliot's body cam, fixed to his chest as he crept through the decaying hallway of the Roosevelt Apartments, a condemned building on the edge of Detroit that the locals refused to go near after sundown. "This place is a death trap," Liv muttered under her breath, tapping her laptop to bring up the infrared overlay. "What do you see?" "Nothing yet," Elliot whispered. "But I heard scratching. In the walls. And it wasn't mice. It was too slow." "Don't be dramatic. I'm serious." Liv didn't doubt him. Not entirely. Not after what they'd seen in West Virginia. Or Alabama. Or that night in rural Kansas when something with two long limbs walked on their van's roof. The Roosevelt Apartments was supposed to be a quick hit. Legend had it that a maintenance man in the 1960s, a war vet with a damaged mind, had been accused of spying on tenants through hidden vents. When the police finally investigated, they found secret passageways in the walls, and a nest of filth, clothing, and teeth. He was never caught. Some said he never left. The building was razed in parts, but this one remaining wing still stood, rotting, empty, and whispering. Elliot turned a corner, his flashlight beam catching a smear of something dark against the peeling green wallpaper. He leaned in. "Is that blood?" Liv asked through the mic. "No," Elliot replied, voice low. "Worse. It's hair." In her corner of the van, Liv sat bolt upright. "Human." Elliot didn't answer right away. He pressed his gloved fingers to the tangle. It was embedded in the wall's seams, almost woven into the plaster. Long strands, brown, matted, still clinging to what looked like flakes of skin. "Jesus," he breathed. "It's growing out of the wall." Before Liv could respond, a hollow thump echoed down the hallway from Elliot's cam. He whipped around. Nothing. No breeze. No shifting debris. Just that persistent, growing sense that something was watching. Back in the van, Liv felt her breath catch. The thermal feed spiked. "Elliot, behind you." He turned, slow. The camera shifted with his movement, showing only the hallway he'd just come down. "Empty." "No. No, there's a hot spot right there," Liv said, tapping the screen. "There's nothing here." Elliot turned back. And the camera flickered. Then it moved. Just a split-second shudder, but not like a technical glitch. It was like something had bumped the camera. Something Elliot hadn't seen. "Liv?" But the sound cut out. The camera feed scrambled, went black. Liv yanked her headphones off, heart pounding. "Elliot? Do you copy?" Only static. She bolted out of the van into the freezing night air, her boots crunching on the glass-strewn sidewalk. The Roosevelt loomed ahead, its upper windows gaping like open mouths. Shit, she whispered, gripping the flashlight from her belt and heading for the entrance. Inside, the stench hit her like a slap. Mold, mildew, rot, and something else. A thick, coppery smell she'd only ever encountered once before, at a crash site in Pennsylvania. She held her breath and moved in, calling Elliot's name. The air was thick, heavy, charged. She passed the wall where the hair had been, but it was gone now. The wallpaper was undisturbed. Clean. As if someone had peeled off the horror and patched it up in minutes. "Elliot!" she shouted again. A creak. Above her. She aimed the flashlight up. The beam caught something just for a moment. An eye. Peering through a vent. Then it vanished. Liv stumbled back, dropping her light. The beam spun wildly, landing on the end of the hallway where something crouched just out of view. Breathing. Raspy, wet, and slow. Her hand scrambled for the walkie. "I don't know what I saw," she gasped into it, "but we have to get out of here." "Elliot's gone." There was no response. And then, from the walls, scratching. Like fingernails. Dozens of them. From every direction. She ran. Chapter 2. the hitchhiker of Route 41. The wind howled off Lake Michigan as the van cruised down a forgotten stretch of Route 41, headlights carving tunnels through the thick evening fog. Liv sat in the passenger seat, staring blankly out the window, her mind still echoing with Elliot's last, static-choked words. Gone. They'd searched that building for hours after she fled the hallway. Called his name. Waited. Pleaded. But it was like the Roosevelt had swallowed him whole. No blood. No signs of struggle. Just that one, final frame on the corrupted footage, a figure crawling sideways out of the wall. 3 weeks later, there was still no sign of him. The Detroit PD had written it off as a missing persons case. Maybe he ran, they said. These urban explorer types go off-grid all the time. But Liv knew better. She hadn't shut the project down. If anything, she doubled down. The team was smaller now, just her, Jared, and Casey, but the purpose had sharpened. They weren't chasing internet stories anymore. They were hunting something real. Next stop's Oconto, Jared said from behind the wheel, his dark eyes darting toward her, then back to the road. You sure you're good to do this? Liv nodded once. Yeah. We've got the gear. Audio traps. Thermal. EMF. I'm ready. Casey looked up from her laptop in the back seat. This one's different. Local legends old. Pre-internet. Goes back to the 50s. Maybe earlier. Liv didn't respond. Casey cleared her throat and continued anyway. So the story goes, there's this stretch of Route 41, just north of Green Bay, where people see a woman walking alone on foggy nights. Usually in a blue dress. Drivers stop. She gets in. Doesn't speak. But she points, just once, toward a side road up ahead. Jared raised a brow. And what happens if you turn? She disappears, Casey said. Or screams. Liv turned toward her. Screams. Ear-splitting. Some say it blows out the car windows. One guy had his eardrums ruptured. Crashed into a ditch. Said he saw her face before the car flipped. No eyes. Just sockets. Like. Okay, Jared cut in, giving Casey a look. Maybe save the juicy bits for later. They drove on in silence, swallowed by the mist as dusk slipped into full night. Oconto wasn't much to look at, just a scattering of lonely farms, a gas station with one flickering pump, and an old diner that hadn't changed its sign since the Eisenhower era. They parked just off the highway, near the mile marker the sightings always mentioned. Liv stepped out into the damp night air and scanned the road. A 2-lane stretch with no lights. Just dark pine forest pressing in on either side. The fog was thicker here. Unnatural. It clung to the shoulders like wet wool. Let's set up, Liv said. They placed thermal traps along the roadside, mounted the high-gain mic on the roof of the van, and synced the night vision cams. Jared set the infrared dashcam to record continuously. Casey adjusted the mic gain. Winds picking up. Could mess with the levels. Liv nodded. We wait. Midnight came fast. They sat in the van, cameras rolling, silence thick between them. Casey monitored the audio feeds while Jared watched the monitors. Liv just stared out the windshield, hand resting on the recorder clipped to her jacket. At 12:47 a.m., the temperature dropped by 8 degrees in under a minute. Thermal just glitched, Casey whispered. Camera 3, roadside south. Look. They watched as the fog thickened, swirling unnaturally. Then, from the shadows, a figure. Walking. Liv sat bolt upright. There. She opened the door slowly, camera in hand, and stepped out into the freezing air. The woman moved slowly, her bare feet padding silently along the white line. She wore a pale blue dress that fluttered in the breeze. Her hair hung long, dripping wet, as though she'd just emerged from a lake. Jesus, Jared muttered from behind her. She's real. Liv stepped onto the road, lifting the camera. Ma'am? Are you all right? The woman didn't respond. Just turned her head slowly. Her face was pale, too pale. Moonlight reflected off damp skin. Her lips were blue. Then she raised one arm, pointed down a dirt road just ahead. Exactly like the legend. Liv took a breath and stepped forward. "Wait," Jared called. "Don't go down there." But Liv was already walking. The woman turned and began to move ahead, gliding more than walking, disappearing into the mist that swallowed the side road. The others followed, slow and tense, keeping the cameras trained on the fog. They passed under gnarled tree branches, the road narrowing, gravel crunching beneath their feet. Then, a scream. It tore through the air with inhuman force. Liv dropped to her knees, clutching her ears. Jared fell back, his camera cracking against the road. Casey's mic overloaded, the waveform spiking to red and cutting out. And then silence. Liv opened her eyes. The woman was gone. But there was something else ahead in the fog. Something darker. Moving. A shape. Wrong. Twisted. Crawling toward them fast. Liv scrambled to her feet. "Run." They turned and bolted back toward the van, branches slapping their faces, the sound of claws scrabbling on gravel behind them. Jared reached the van first, flinging the door open. Casey dove in after him, sobbing. Liv looked back once, and saw it. Not the woman. Not anymore. It was wearing her skin like a costume, stretched too tight, the jaw hanging loose, black sockets leaking something thick and dark. Then she was inside, slamming the door shut. "Drive!" she screamed. Jared hit the gas, tires squealing as they peeled away. And behind them, in the mirror, the thing watched, smiling with a mouth that didn't belong to it. Chapter 3. The Red Room Broadcast. 3 days later, the footage from Route 41 was locked behind a new encrypted folder, labeled simply, "Do not share." Liv stared at the screen, frame by frame. In the final seconds before the scream, before the thing revealed itself, there was a visual distortion, no more than 3 frames, barely noticeable unless you slowed the video to a crawl. In that fragment of a second, the woman's face shifted. Pixelated. Like an old television signal glitching into something else. Not flesh. Not ghost. Code. The realization sat like ice in Liv's stomach. It wasn't just a ghost. It was something bleeding through. A glitch in the veil. "Guys," she said quietly, waving Jared and Casey over to her laptop. "I think there's something bigger going on." Casey leaned over her shoulder, adjusting her glasses. "Wait, rewind that." Liv did. Jared frowned. "What is that?" "That's static. It almost looks like a broadcast," Liv finished. They stared at the freeze frame. It wasn't a scream distorted by the mic. It was a signal. An intentional sound wave. A buried frequency layered beneath the supernatural event. Someone, something, was transmitting. "Black masking," Casey muttered. "There are forums about this. Old legends from the deep web. They call it the Red Room Broadcast. Supposed to be an underground stream that shows up uninvited on people's devices. No host. No channel. Just horror. It hijacks your signal, plays once, and vanishes. Every time someone watches it, someone dies." Jared snorted. "That's a creepypasta. It's fake. Like the Roosevelt was fake. Like that thing in Wisconsin." Liv said. Silence. Casey typed quickly, pulling up a Tor browser and navigating to an obscure, encrypted forum, drkst.net. Dozens of threads. All paranoid. All fringe. But every third post mentioned it. Saw the room again. Red walls. Woman crying. Couldn't turn it off. My brother's missing. They said don't click the link. I clicked. I heard static. Something's in the basement now. I recorded the sound. Played it backward. It said my name. Casey's eyes widened. Liv. I think we can find it. Jared shook his head. You want to find a haunted live stream that kills people? We don't even know what it is, Liv said. But the signal from Route 41 matches the waveform in these posts. I think someone, or something, is using these legends, stitching them together, broadcasting them, maybe creating them. Casey looked up, and if we trace the source, we find Elliot. That was all Liv needed. They began hunting the broadcast that night, tapping into SDR, software-defined radio, monitoring random packets from dead IPs, watching for frequency spikes. The signal was elusive, moving, fracturing. Sometimes it appeared for half a second on a random channel, then disappeared. It wasn't until 4 nights later that they finally got a hit. At 3:14 a.m., a shortwave burst came through one of their antennas in static-laced Morse code. Dash. Straight face slash. Slash. Dash. 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 Track me first. Jesus, Jared muttered. The same moment, every monitor in their van lit up red. A video began to play. Unprompted. Liv stared. Frozen. A dimly lit room. No windows. Walls painted red. Fresh. Wet. A woman sat in the center, back turned to the camera, sobbing softly. In the corner, a television set. White static flickering. And on the screen, Elliot. Eyes wide. Mouth open. Screaming, but there was no sound. Liv's stomach turned. The woman's sobs grew louder. Then she slowly turned. Her face was blurred. Glitched. Except for the mouth. It moved. One word. Hello. Every screen went black. Their equipment fried. Sparks burst from the interface boards. Casey screamed and yanked her hands back, fingers singed. The van shuddered. And then, silence. They sat in stunned darkness, the smell of burnt plastic filling the cabin. Jared finally whispered, "What the fuck just happened?" Liv's eyes didn't leave the blank screen. "We're being watched." Casey shook her head. "No. We're being invited." Liv stood and walked to the rack of backup drives. She pulled out the GPS tracker they had synced with their SDR. The signal had an origin point. Eden, Vermont. A nothing town. Not even on some maps. But the source had pinged from there, just once, seconds before the screens went red. Liv pulled up an old post she'd saved from a defunct paranormal blog. In 1978, a local access station in Eden aired a single episode of a children's puppet show before going dark. The episode only aired to 3 homes. All 3 residents were found days later, missing their eyes and tongues. The tapes were confiscated. No one remembers the name. Liv highlighted the coordinates. That's where we go next. Jared swallowed hard. What if it's a trap? Then we spring it. Chapter 4. Channel 119. They reached Eden under a pale sun smothered by low, gray clouds, the town barely more than a memory etched into the frostbitten Vermont hills. A single general store. A shuttered post office. And beyond that, crumbling farmhouses with shattered windows, left to decay under the weight of moss and time. Their destination was at the edge of the woods, a squat, concrete building once used as a public access station. The town records named it WLCR-TV, though nothing had aired from it in decades. The locals either didn't remember it existed or pretended it never had. The road leading to it was cracked and overgrown, forcing them to park the van a half-mile out. As they walked through the woods, Casey tapped nervously on her tablet. No internet. No cell. Not even a satellite ping. It's like we've dropped off the grid entirely. Jared scanned the trees with a handheld EMF reader. The needle twitched erratically. This whole place is wrong. Then, through the trees, it appeared. WLCR-TV. The building looked like a bunker, windowless, thick-walled, with vines strangling the satellite dish on the roof. A rusted antenna stretched upward, piercing the sky like a broken spine. Liv exhaled and moved toward the door. It wasn't locked. Inside, the air was dry, dead, and cold. The walls were lined with faded foam panels. Empty desk chairs sat like corpses at rusted control boards. Old cables snaked across the floor like veins. But the broadcast room was intact. Cameras from the 70s still pointed toward a small stage. A curtain hung loosely across the back. Stage lights dangled above, burnt out and coated in dust. And sitting in the middle of the set, untouched for decades, was a low table and 2 chairs. One adult-sized. One child-sized. Liv's heart raced. This is it. Casey moved cautiously to the control booth. The equipment looked ancient, but the power indicators blinked faintly. "Guys," she whispered. "It's drawing power. From somewhere." "Impossible," Jared muttered. "I'm telling you, it's wait. Something's feeding into the old broadcast console." Liv joined her. The interface was analog. Knobs, switches, and a single glowing monitor with a single channel tuned in. 119. Dead air hissed across the speaker. Then a voice. Childlike. "Tinny. Welcome back." Casey stumbled back. "It's on. It's still on." Jared raised the camera. "Are we recording?" Liv nodded. "We're always recording." The screen began to flicker. The static parted, revealing a room. Red walls. The same as before. A marionette dangled from the ceiling. Lifeless, handmade, crudely stitched. Then it jerked upright, its wooden limbs twitching like it was being yanked by invisible hands. A second puppet entered frame, a crude replica of a child in a paper crown. They turned toward the screen in unison. "Are you watching?" they asked, in the same childlike voice. "He's here now. He never left." The screen shifted. A door appeared behind the puppets. It opened. A figure stepped out. Liv gasped. "Elliot." But wrong. He was pale, gaunt, eyes sunken. Strings dangled from his limbs. His mouth opened, and the same distorted scream from Route 41 blared through the monitor, loud enough to rattle the walls. Liv and Jared both dropped to the ground, covering their ears. Casey ripped the power cable from the wall. The room went dark. Silence fell. But the screen was still glowing. Liv looked up. A single sentence burned across the monitor in red text. "Channel 119 is now open." And beneath it, "You have been seen." Suddenly, the emergency lights flicked on. From the far corner of the broadcast room, behind the stage curtain, came the sound of shuffling. Slow. Deliberate. The curtain moved. Jared raised his flashlight. "Don't," Casey whispered, frozen. But he stepped forward and pulled the curtain aside. There was a door. Not part of the original blueprint. Not wood or metal. It looked fabricated. Organic. Its surface pulsed slightly, like muscle. And embedded in its center was a camera lens. Watching. Recording. And etched in a ring around the door's edge, scrawled in hundreds of overlapping hands. "The show must go on." Liv turned to the others. "We go in." Casey backed away. "No, Liv, this is the source. Whatever this is, it's feeding on us. The legends. The fear. We're giving it an audience." "That's exactly why we have to go in," Liv said. "We're not just filming stories anymore. We're in one." Jared looked at her. "What if we can't come back?" Liv swallowed hard. "Then let's make it count." She opened the door. And stepped through. Chapter 5. The Audience. The moment Liv crossed the threshold, sound ceased. No wind. No echo. Even her own breath became silent, swallowed by the crushing hush that filled the space beyond the door. She stepped into darkness, pure and absolute. The kind of dark that pressed against your skin, heavy and humid like a fever dream. Then, with a sharp click, lights snapped on overhead. Rows of red velvet theater seats stretched before her in perfect symmetry. Dust floated through the stale air like motes of ash. The room was massive, cavernous, far too large to exist inside the building they'd just entered. Jared and Casey stepped in behind her, speechless. The door slammed shut behind them with a bone-deep thud, and when Jared spun around to check it, the door was gone. Just more rows of empty seats. "What is this?" Casey whispered, her voice trembling. Liv shook her head slowly, taking it in. At the front of the theater was a stage, small and low to the floor. Red curtains swayed even though there was no breeze. On either side of the stage, TV sets sat stacked like altars. Dozens of them. All playing static. Then, faintly at first, they began to flicker. Images pulsed across the screens in unison. Snippets from their own footage. The Roosevelt Apartments. The Hitchhiker. The Red Room broadcast. Then, Elliot. Jared stared. That's our content. It's watching us, Liv whispered. Feeding off the stories we collect. Like it's using them to grow. A chime rang out through the theater. Low. Warm. Like a bell before a show. The curtains pulled apart. And something stepped onto the stage. It wore a suit. Black and crisp. Too perfect. Its face, though, was covered by a porcelain mask. Expressionless, painted with a child's smile. It raised one hand in greeting. Then it spoke, but the voice didn't come from the figure. It came from the speakers behind them, too many to count, stacked into the walls of the theater. Welcome, the voice intoned, to the archive. The screens behind the stage began flashing rapidly, hundreds of faces. People screaming, crying, running, dying. Casey backed away, her voice cracking. Liv, these are victims. Every urban legend, every haunted tape, every cursed road, every whisper, they're all real. This thing's been archiving them. Compiling them. Or creating them, Jared added, horrified. The masked figure turned, gesturing to the screens. They come from you, the voice continued. You tell the stories. You keep them alive. You are the authors. The figure stepped forward. And now, you are the content. With that, the seats around them filled. Silent figures materialized, row by row, audience members in masks, motionless, their heads all turning in unison toward the stage. Jared aimed the camera toward them. Are those people? Liv zoomed in. Some were still. Some breathed. Some, barely, twitched. The nearest mask was cracked. Behind it, a bloodshot eye stared back at her. These are the others, she said. The ones who watched the Red Room. Who vanished after the stories. They're part of the show now. Casey turned to run. But the aisles had disappeared. Replaced by mirrors. Each mirror showed a different version of themselves. Walking into different legends. One showed Liv burning film reels in an attic, screaming. Another showed Jared strung upside down in a tree, blood pooling below him. Another showed Casey opening a door to a bedroom full of faceless children. We have to shut this down, Liv said. Before it spreads. How? Jared hissed. It's already everywhere. It's a broadcast. Then we give it something it can't contain, Liv said, stepping toward the stage. Casey reached for her. Wait. What are you doing? Liv climbed the stairs slowly, the masked figure watching her without moving. She turned to face the audience. All you do is watch, she said to the sea of faces. All you do is consume pain, fear. You amplify it. You wear our stories like skin. The lights above began to flicker. The figure moved, tilting its head like a curious animal. So fine, Liv said. Here's a story for you. She reached into her jacket and pulled out the drive. The raw footage from all their cases. Unedited. Unfiltered. And the signal. She jammed it into the monitor on stage. The screens behind her pulsed. The static warped. The mirrored walls cracked. The audience began to twitch, fidget, some masks falling away to reveal blackened, rotting flesh. The masked figure reached toward her, but too late. Liv hit play. The signal roared through the system. Every screen exploded into color, every frequency overlapping, overloading. Screams filled the air, not from the monitors, but from the audience itself. The theater convulsed, folding inward. And the voice spoke one last time. You are no longer the viewers. The lights burst. Darkness fell. And then, Silence. Chapter 6. Ghost Frequency. When Liv opened her eyes, everything was still. She lay on cold pavement, gravel biting into her side. Above her, clouds churned in a colorless sky. Wind rustled through skeletal trees. No more velvet seats. No stage. No figure in a porcelain mask. Just the shoulder of a deserted road. Route 41. Again. She sat up, gasping, checking her limbs. She was intact. No pain. No injuries. But her skin was coated in something fine, ash or dust, and her ears still rang. To her left, Casey stirred, coughing violently as she pushed herself to her knees. Jared sat against the guardrail, eyes wide, breathing hard. What the hell was that? Liv looked around. The van was back. Parked crooked on the roadside shoulder, its headlights flickering like dying fireflies. The air was thick with ozone and static. They were alive. But changed. Casey stumbled to her feet, clutching her tablet. We were inside it. Inside the signal. No. It was inside us, Jared muttered, running a hand through his matted hair. The archive. The stories. It's using us to tell them. To keep them alive. Liv looked toward the trees. Beyond them, the landscape was subtly wrong, stretched, blurred around the edges. As though reality had been compressed. Check the footage, she said. Casey opened her laptop with shaking hands. Somehow, it was still powered. She tapped into the local server drive. The files were still there. Uncorrupted. But different. Each one had a new label. Not timestamps. Not case names. Just coordinates. Liv clicked on the newest one. 47.4329 degrees north. 92.9405 degrees west. A still image appeared. A forest. Nighttime. A white wooden shack barely visible between the trees. In the corner of the frame, something watching from the shadows. Too tall. Wrong proportioned. Covered in burlap. She checked the GPS. That's in northern Minnesota, she said. Near the Iron Range. Jared looked at her. Are you saying, there's another one? There's always another one, Casey whispered. The reality hit them like a slow-moving train. They'd escaped the archive. But the signal hadn't died. It had spread. Because by trying to destroy it, they had given it what it wanted most, a climax. A finale. An audience. And now it was broadcasting new episodes. Feeding on fresh stories. Do we warn people? Jared asked. Tell them not to watch? Not to listen? Wouldn't matter, Liv said quietly. If you've heard even one story, it already knows your name. Casey turned to her. So what now? Liv looked down at the next file. Another legend. Another location. Another horror waiting to be seen. We keep going, she said. We hunt them down. Document them. Find the signal routes. We stop it from growing. And if it grows anyway? Jared asked. Liv's eyes were cold now. Determined. Then we take it down with us. She reached for her recorder, clicked it on, and whispered the date, time, and location into the mic. Casey climbed into the van. Jared turned the key. And the road swallowed them whole once again. The signal buzzed quietly beneath the radio static. Somewhere in the trees, an old antenna crackled to life. And a new story began.